Hello and welcome to Planet Smasher HQ. I've got a new game coming out this week and I thought I would show it to you. Pacific Command. It's a war game of World War II aircraft carrier battles. It's an Osprey Wargame's Blue Book, just like the original Gaslands and also A Billion Suns. Right, let's have a look inside. Now this Blue Book is a little bit thicker than the other ones I just mentioned. They gave me a few more pages this time. Pacific Command is my first historical war game. And I'll be honest with you, I was a little bit nervous about it, but I did lots of research and initial reviews have been complimentary about the way that the history is handled. Phew. Between December 1941 and August 1945, a sea war was fought in the Pacific unlike any before. The 250-year reign of the battleship was ended by the long-range striking power of aircraft carriers. Pacific Command is a tabletop war game of World War II naval combat in the Pacific, which puts you in control of dozens of warships and hundreds of aircrafts, fighting battles as much about bluffing and surprise as strength of arms. The game has a particular focus on fog of war and aircraft carrier logistics, and zooms out to a grand scale to let players tell stories as full of dilemmas, uncertainties and double-blind gambits as the battles of Coral Sea, Midway and later Gulf. There's a note on scale here. The Pacific Ocean is big, really big. In total, this one ocean covers more of the Earth's surface than all the land masses combined. If you lose something in the Pacific Ocean, even something the size of an aircraft carrier, and you don't have access to radar or satellites, it's truly hopelessly lost. The Pacific War was a conflict fought without satellites, and with only the most rudimentary radar technology. When a fleet of warships set sail on the Pacific, they disappeared into that vastness, and anyone that stumbled across them had pricked themselves on the proverbial haystack needle. Therein lies our fascination for the Pacific War. It is a war in which combatants now had the ability to strike each other from beyond the horizons, if only they could figure out where their enemy was. That immensity provides both the canvas and the core conflict for our stories of the Pacific War, stories of uncertainty, confusion, misdirection and triumph. The canvas of Pacific Command is drawn at an epic scale, suitable for refighting these conflicts and retelling these stories. So, in terms of ground scale, Pacific Command is a strategic level game that deals with carrier task forces, and so a ground scale is used that allows for such conflicts to play out in full on a regular gaming table. In Pacific Command, 1 inch represents 10 nautical miles, which means a 6x4 gaming table represents an area of about 720 by 480 nautical miles, plenty of space in which to lose aircraft carriers. Now, when the location of these fighting ships are unknown to the enemy, which is pretty much always at the start of the battle, stacks of poker chips are used as an abstract representation of the general area in which the task force is sailing, or thought to be sailing. So a chip represents an area of ocean about 15 nautical miles in diameter. So in Pacific Command, you command task forces, which are initially represented by poker chips, but then turn into a single representative miniature once they've been located by the enemy. These task forces represent groups of potentially dozens of ships, often centered around a small number of aircraft carriers. But in Pacific Command, they behave as individual war machines on the table. They're essentially an individual unit, and all of the fighting capabilities and weaponry of the ships in the task force combine to make up the various stats of those task forces. Now, at the back of the book, we have got a task force sheet, which allows you to record the call sign for your task sheet, the commander's name, and then some statistics. Now, these statistics are built up from the values that the ships will provide. So you're going to say 1 fleet carrier, and it's going to have a roll of aircraft 15, and that allows you to add 15 to your aircraft stat. And so if I've got two of those, then maybe I've got an aircraft stat of 13. And so you record all of the details of your ships and squadrons on your task force sheet, tossing up their cost, and then you've also got a column here for recording when they are sunk during the battle. I have also made some attractive full-coloured ones, which you can download and print from my website, and I'll be giving away at UK Games Expo and any other show in the future before I run out of them. Now, as I said, task forces in Pacific Command start hidden in stacks of poker chips. So what you do is you take a poker chip and you write on it in pencil or Sharpie the call sign of the task force. And you do that for all of your task forces. And then these guys get combined with some blank chips, which are going to act as dummies. And you take a black base chip and you take one or more of your task forces and you hide them. And you hide them to form a stack. And then these stacks of chips are the things that you move around on the table, pushing them towards your opponent as units until they are revealed normally by aircraft reconnaissancing them, but sometimes you can drive up and bump into them. And at the point when the task force is revealed from the stack gets replaced with a miniature to represent the task force sailing about. And once it's a miniature, you just measure from the conning tower. When you've got a stack, you measure from anywhere. That's the core of how the Fog of War system works. You start with things as piles of chips, and then as they get revealed, they turn into representative miniatures. Now, as well as poker chips, we also use playing cards, regular old playing cards in this game. Now, these represent aircraft, and you're going to take these cards and stage them onto the task force sheets that have aircraft carriers in them. And the cards really are of two kinds. They're either black or red. Red ones are strike aircraft, like bombers, and black ones are defensive aircraft, like fighters. The bulk of the game happens in the action phase, where you receive a stack of command chips, and you spend these chips one at a time, alternating between the players to take particular actions. And here there's a picture of most of the things that you need to play the game, including the poker chips, the cards, the task force sheets that you have printed off, some regular D6, and some islands, some flat island terrain, which is available to download from the Osprey website or from planetsmashergames.com. And you'll need some tiny ships. You can use any scale. I like using these 1/6000 because they're teeny tiny, and I like the look of them on the table. So then we've got the key concept and core rules, which set up the basics of the game, including an important thing called battle scale, which might be a bit familiar to you if you have played A Billion Suns. But basically, games of Pacific Command are given a scale between 2 and 7, which is basically the size of the game. So a scale 2 is a small skirmish between 1 or 2 small task forces, and scale 7 is like the hugest engagement, the size of like the Battle of the Philippine Sea. I recommend that you start with a scale 3 battle using the starter fleets that I provide. So the basics are that you've got a fleet. That fleet contains units, and those units are basically stacks or reveals task forces. And your task forces are the individual fighting units that are going to actually do the attacking. And they contain multiple ships and squadrons operating as a single fighting machine, and you've got a task force sheet for each of them. And then you've also got a flagship for each of them, and that's the miniature that gets put when the task force is revealed. Stops being a chip and starts being a miniature. Then it's the flagship, which is basically the most expensive ship in the task force to sort of represent what we're dealing with. Task forces have stats. They've got a set of stats, and these are built up from the values of the roll, as I'll get to. But the row of stats is going to be their combat air patrol value, CAP value, which is the measure of the defensive air force. Strike, which is how many dice essentially they're going to send out when they make air strikes against enemy units. The anti-aircraft value is what you roll against incoming strike aircraft. The guns is what you roll when you are engaged in a surface battle with another task force. And then aircraft is the number of squadrons that you can purchase for this task force during fleet building, but also the number that you can operate during air actions. And so as your carriers get destroyed, this number will decrease, and your ability to operate aircraft will decrease commensurately. And then you've got a total cost for the task force. we have a generic list of kind of ship and squadron classes. So everyone's picking from the same menu here. And when you're building a task force, you're choosing from fleet carrier, light carrier, seaplane tender, battleship, heavy cruiser, light cruiser, destroyer, submarine, auxiliary, and then you've got your two different kinds of squadrons. You've got your fighter squadron and your bomber squadron. They all have different costs and they have a different role. And this is essentially the stat that they contribute to and how much they contribute to it. So a fleet carrier, for example, its role is aircraft 15, so it increases the task force's aircraft stat by 15. A destroyer has guns 1, so each destroyer that you add to your task force increases its guns value by 1. It also increases its anti-aircraft by 1, because all ships add 1 to the task force's anti-aircraft value, except for these ones that have got some special rules that say otherwise. So here, weak AA defences means they don't contribute, and there are some other special rules here that affect the units in various ways. High value doesn't provide any mechanical benefit to the unit, but it tends to lock into victory conditions. Armoured 2 means that it resists damage a bit more, etc, etc. So here's a description of how squadrons work and the special rules that ships can have. And then some discussion of how chips and stacks work in the game, which goes through the different kinds of chips that you can have. Some of them are going to be task forces, some of them are going to be these things called Gambits. Here's a Gambit G2. Gambits are like secret surprise things that you can hide inside your stack of chips, and then when an opponent recons the stack and finds a gambit, then that's like a trap, and so something bad will happen as a result of them finding it. Kind of nicked that off of Netrunner, if I'm honest. I'm quite pleased with that mechanic. A lot of the chips on the table are going to be just blank chips. They're essentially there as dummies, so they represent the fog of war, and it's because there are blank chips that you are going to have to recon stacks and find out whether there is actually anything of value in that stack, or whether it's just a big old pile of blank tokens that I'm spending resources to move around to fool you. And then there will be opportunities to reveal chips. Like I said, you'll mostly do it by shooting aircraft at them, but you can also do it by bumping into them with your task forces. Setting up a game of Pacific Command, you choose a scenario, either the historical ones or you generate the game using the arcade mode rules. You agree on a battle scale. Again, I recommend starting with scale 3. You can build fleets. If it's your first game, I provide a scale 3 starter fleet, and I recommend you both just use that. But you can build your own fleets and add special rules called modifications that we'll get to. Then you need to prepare your task force sheets for each of your task forces, and then you need to organise your chips into stacks. And there's the rules here about how you go about building your stacks. Now, you can't just put your task forces into as many stacks as you want. There are limits here. So you only get a certain number of blank chips, and you only get to arrange your chips into a maximum number of stacks. Both of those are controlled by the scale of the game. And then you'll need to gather your miniatures, gather your air group cards, which is basically just taking a regular deck of cards and splitting it in half, and then follow any setup rules for the scenario. So like I said, for your first game, I recommend that you play a scale 3 game, which means 3 task forces, 300 points in total. You use the pre-built scale 3 starter fleets that I give, and then you can, if you like, just follow my instructions for setting up your chips into 5 stacks if you can't quite figure out what the logic of the stacks is going to be. And then that will allow you to get the game up and running, and then you will quickly discover all the trickery and cleverness that you can do with your poker chips on the table. And then I recommend starting with the midway scenario, which is, if not completely fair and balanced, it is a nice simple scenario with a clear objective, and it will immediately get you in a situation where you're kind of discovering how the imbalances and asymmetries in the game play out. So the game of Pacific Command is played over a number of rounds, which is often 6, and there are 2 phases in each round. There's the command phase, where we do some sort of cleanup and setup, and then there's the action phase, where the meat of the game happens. So in the command phase, we pass a first player marker, and I tend to just use a blue poker chip. We then refresh our command chips, which means we gain a number of green chips equal to the scale of the game +2, and you receive 1 fewer command chip for each of your task forces that have been destroyed during this game. And then you and I will both secretly stage our air group. So we will take cards and decide whether we want to stage offensive or defensive aircraft, and the more carriers that we have in our task force, the more cards we can set, and therefore the more flexible and powerful we can be. And there are in this game airfields, which can be and quite often are under player control, and airfields also gets to stage 2 air groups. And with all that preparation done, then we enter the action phase, and what we do is the person with the first player chip spends the first command chip, and with each command chip you spend, you get to take an action. And the actions are either a move action to move a friendly unit, and each unit may only take 1 move action per round, so I tend to take the chip that's been spent and pop it on top of the unit that I just moved, or next to it. There's a fog of war action, which allows you to select one of your revealed task forces, the little miniatures, and perform a fog of war action, which essentially allows it to hide itself again. There's an air action, which allows you to target a single enemy stack with an air action. Now, you don't declare which of your task forces are attacking the enemy. You simply declare an enemy revealed task force, and then you can secretly select attack aircraft or recon aircraft from anyone that's within range, but you don't have to announce who it is. And you can also pass with your chip, which is a rare choice, but it does sometimes come up. Okay, so move actions. Stacks move up to 8 inches when they're in sort of hidden mode, but once they have been revealed as miniatures, then the task force only moves 4 inches. So it is good to keep hidden because you have more uncertainty. Now that is intended to represent the uncertainty of where things are. It's not that when not being observed, the ships travel faster. It's simply that there is more uncertainty about where they are, so hence the longer movement when you are unrevealed. And you can't move through enemy units or land, but you can bump into things. And if you bump into your own stacks, then you can do this thing called a shell game, which allows you to pick up the chips from the stacks that have bumped into each other and then like redistribute them between the two, which allows you to sort of mess with your opponent by moving things around or not moving them around. And then units have a thing called visual range, which is that they can see each other. Chips can see each other when they bump into each other, and revealed units can be seen within 2 inches of other revealed units or chips. Fog of war action allows you to take a revealed battle group and hide it again. And a gun battle is when 2 revealed task forces make visual contact. A gun battle ensues. So you can sail an unrevealed stack into an enemy stack, and if that reveals both of you to be task forces, then you can have a gun battle. And the gun battle is the first time that we bump into the damage system, or the kind of combat system. And the combat system just involves a lot of d6. In a gun battle, both players get to roll dice, and they're going to roll a number of d6 equal to the total guns value of their task force. So they may have, 10 or 15 or even 20 d6 to roll. So you roll your guns dice. 1, 2, 3s are misses, and then 4s and 5s is what's called an unconfirmed hit, and a 6 is a confirmed hit. The difference being that unconfirmed hits get assigned by the defending player, and confirmed hits get assigned by you, the attacker. So this is good because basically all ships have a single hit point. So you want to be rolling 6s so that you can assign damage to valuable targets like carriers and battleships and stuff. But anytime that you roll an unconfirmed hit, I'm probably just going to assign that to a rubber shield destroyer and kind of chip off the ablative armour of my task force. Now when a ship suffers a hit and is damaged, then it's immediately sunk, and you strike a tally mark in the sunk column of the task force's sheet. And then after you've been through and resolved all the damage, you might need to modify your task force's stats, because if things have been sunk, then they no longer contribute to the stats, and so your guns or your aircraft value may have gone down. You only assign hits to ships, not squadrons. Aircraft are quite abstracted in this game, and so they don't get like destroyed specifically. And then there is a rule called armoured, and that means that you have to assign at least that many hits to sink the ship, or it gets ignored. So in this case, if I'd have rolled a couple of 6s, I could assign 2 6s to a fleet carrier, and that would allow me to sink it. If I only rolled the 1 6, then that wouldn't be enough. I would assign a single hit, which isn't enough to get through its armoured value, and so that would be ignored. Or I would probably just go and assign it to something else, like a heavy cruiser or something. And in a gun battle, all of the dice rolling and assigning of hits is simultaneous. So it's kind of like this is almost like a close combat system in this game. And then we get to the air action, which is the real meat of this game. So in an air action, daring pilots set out on their raid. They have to evade intercepting fighters and weather AA fire to deliver a deadly strike on the enemy. But they also are used for reconnaissance. So it may just be that you are sending a reconnaissance action out, perhaps some seaplanes, or sending out your combat aircraft to do a more detailed reconnaissance. And that is got a recon system that allows you to fish into the stack and pull chips out to see what you've got. So I won't go through all of the rules in gory detail, but the air action is made up of these 7 steps. When you spend a command chip for an air action, you secretly select one of your task forces and then declare an enemy unit within either recon range, or if you plan to attack it, you better make sure it's within strike range, which is 18 inches. And then there are these 7 stages, the first one being the briefing step, where you secretly select your active task force, declare a target unit, optionally commit a air group card, and this is interesting because you will take the air group card off of the task force sheet, which will let your opponent know which task force is involved, but it doesn't tell them where the task force is. If they're still hidden, then they can be hidden in any of the in-range stacks. You're just telling them which task force is involved. The second step is the recon step. So if the target unit is a stack, then you make a recon roll and you peek at chips. And you can optionally discard your air group card for a reroll on this. Then there's the declare strike step. If you've targeted a revealed task force, or you just revealed a task force in the previous recon step, then you can reveal a black committed air group card to launch a strike against a revealed task force, as long as they're within strike range. And you amass your strike dice, which basically means you put a big old load of dice, depending on what the strike value of your task force was, and you put them on your revealed black strike group. Now, if you don't declare a strike at this point, you just skip straight to the last step, which is the debriefing step. But if you are embarking on an airstrike, then there is a couple of additional steps. Number 4 here is the interception step. Your opponent can reveal a red air group card from the strike target, or any friendly task forces within 8 inches of the target to send fighters to intercept your strike planes. They roll some interception dice, needing 5 ups, and each hit forces you to discard a strike dice, sort of the dice representing like almost aircraft getting shot down off of the attacking air group. There's then step 5, anti-aircraft, which is very similar. Ships in the strike target are going to roll their AA dice, normally needing 6s, and each success would shoot down one of the incoming dice, again knocking a strike dice off of the incoming air group. And then we finally get to the strike step. So you roll all of these remaining strike dice, and just like in a gun battle, anything that rolls a 1, 2 or 3 is a miss, 4s and 5s are unconfirmed hits, and 6s are confirmed hits. Again, the difference being that you get to assign confirmed hits to the targets of your choice, but the defender is going to assign unconfirmed hits and likely going to pop them on low value targets. And then finally the debriefing step, any revealed air group cards are discarded, hidden air group cards are returned face down to their task force, so they can be used again. Yeah, and then the next few pages provide details for each of these steps, including some diagrams running through an example in some detail. I didn't really mention how recons work. So when you do a recon roll, you roll 2 dice and you add them together. If the result is equal or under the target number of 8, then the recon roll succeeds, and you check the lower of the 2 dice that you just rolled and peek at that many hidden chips from the target stack. If you roll over the target number, the recon roll fails and your spotters find nothing. That target number of 8, it's normally 8, but it can be changed by certain things, such as the effects of weather. And the way that you peek at chips is kind of important. So let's say I'm the US. As the US, I can spend one of my command chips to launch an air action against this. I don't have to declare who is launching the air action. We just know that it's against that. And then I would roll some dice. I rolled a 4. So that is equal or under 8, so it succeeds. And then I check the lower of the 2 dice, so I only get to check 1 of the chips. So what happens is you take the stack, you shuffle the stack, so that neither player knows which chips are about to be looked at. And then you take any one of the chips and you take a little sneaky peek at it. Oh, we didn't find anything, that's a blank chip. And then we can, depending on whether the chip is blank or a gambit or a task force, we get a few options. In this case, it's a blank chip, so I can either discard it or I can put it back. In this case, I might put it back without showing it to my opponent. And then I will shuffle these and put them back on top of here. Now, I have seen a chip, but you don't know which chip I saw, and I put the chip back so you're not even certain if I found a blank chip or a task force, and just decided to keep that to myself to gain an information advantage. So the next few pages continue through the strike step, interception, anti-aircraft, assigning the strike hits and debriefing. A bit more information here about damage, when you sink a ship, when you sink carriers, and when all the ships in a task force are sunk, it's destroyed. There are rules for airfields, which are used in quite a lot of the historical scenarios, and also transport groups, which again are a certain kind of auxiliary ship that comes up in the scenarios quite a lot. Here's the gambits that I mentioned earlier. These get hidden in your stacks as chips with numbers written on them. And when I find one of your gambits during a recon action, then I have to follow the rules given on the gambit. So it could be something like unexpected approach vector. When this gambit is revealed by an enemy action, its owner selects one of the enemy stacks and places it anywhere within 18 inches of the stack where this gambit was found in, and discard this gambit. Or code's broken. When this gambit is revealed by an enemy action, its owner receives 1 command chip, and their opponent must discard 1 command chip. So you can see these are sort of traps that provide an advantage when I trick you into finding them. Then we get to the fleet building rules, how you create a task force and a fleet made of task forces. Here's the scale 3 starter fleets. So you get a task force with a couple of fleet carriers and a hefty support. 1 fleet carrier, 1 light carrier, and a little bit of a support, and then 1 small battleship task force there. So that gives you a nice kind of asymmetrical set of task forces to get going with. And then here are the modifications. These are special rules that you can apply to a whole fleet, and they allow you to tweak the rules of that fleet to better represent either a specific nation or a nation during a specific period of the war, or a specific fleet that's operating under some particular constraints or advantages. So these are things like aircraft shortage, which is disadvantageous. All ships in this fleet have their aircraft values halved, rounding up. Or enemy codes, this fleet receives 1 additional command ship each round. So there's a couple of pages of these modifications, and then I provide some suggestions for if you are playing early war or late war, what the United States Navy or Imperial Japanese Navy might have. And if you want to play with a different nation, or you feel that these aren't quite representing the state of affairs in the particular conflict that you want to fight, then you can mess about with these modifications to your heart's desire. Then we have a set of historical scenarios. So we've got Coral Sea, which provides a setup map and a set of deployment and victory conditions. Each player has different objectives. We got Midway with the different briefings and the different objectives. We've got Eastern Solomons, again with specific briefings and objectives for each side. deployment and setup rules. Here's the map for the Eastern Solomons. Santa Cruz with the briefings and objectives. This, like many of these scenarios, is involving transport groups and airfields. And then finally we've got the Philippine Sea, June 1944, with the briefings and some pretty complicated objectives, particularly for Japan to achieve. Here's the deployment map for that. Here we've got orders of battle, so if you wanted to field something approaching close to the historical orders of battle, I've done the work for you to calculate out what that translates to in Pacific Command terms, and what the points values for those are for curiosity's sake. And then here we've got the arcade mode. So this is an alternative to playing the historical scenarios, which are all pretty asymmetrical. This allows you to generate a more kind of even balanced game. So you roll up to generate a battle zone, which could be isolated island, archipelago or coastline. You roll up a mission, which is things like 2 harbours, 4 islands, 6 airfields, hold quarters, invasion convoy and smuggle the admiral home. And then you make a roll to see if there is a weather effect for the game. Typhoon, stormy, choppy, which is no effect, crystal clear, smooth as glass, and night. And then if you and your opponent agree, you can select and use any number of modifications. You're going to use Gambits. Here are the mission details with the setups, objectives and victory conditions for each of those. And then finally we've got this campaign mode. So this allows you to set up a series of linked games. So you would decide on a number of games, maybe 5, or a target number of campaign points, perhaps 50, and play until you've got to that. You create a national fleet roster containing 700 points of ships and aircraft, and then you organise them into task forces with no more than 200 points in each. You start with 2 modifications using a random table to generate which modifications you've got. And then you're stuck with those 2 starting modifications, even if they're disadvantageous. And then at the end of the campaign, the player with the most campaign points is the winner. So before each game, you roll d6 plus 1, and the game is played at that scale. You select task forces from the national fleet roster to create your fleet for the game, not exceeding 100 times your scale number of points. And then you select or randomly generate a scenario or build an arcade mode mission. And then you've got your after each game. So after each game in the campaign, ships are assumed to be repaired or replaced and may take part in the next battle. There is a hardcore mode if you want to track damage in a bit more of a aggressive way. And then after each game, you gain and lose campaign points. So if you won the game, you get 15 points. If you scored 6 victory points or more, you get 5 campaign points. And for each of your high-value ships that was sunk, you lose a campaign point. So keep those battleships and fleet carriers afloat, please. And then the research and development here. After each game, you generate 2 random modifications. Again, using this table here, which is you just draw a card. And then you choose one of them to add to your fleet. And if you win the game, you may give the modification you didn't choose to your opponent, who must apply it to their fleet. And then, like I said, there's a hardcore mode here where after each game, you roll a 2d6 for each high-value ship that was sunk, and they may take major damage, which means they miss the next game, or destroyed, which means they're lost for the rest of the campaign. Yeah, and then just at the back here is some afterwards about the design objectives and some commentary on the design of the different sections and why it's the way that it is set up. There's also a fun section here about combining Pacific Command with other war games. So because of the zoomed out scale of it, it's very possible to combine Pacific Command with other games, making kind of Pacific Command almost like the campaign system. So gun battles could be resolved with separate small naval war games. The air actions and